Hello, and today we're going to have a look at rhubarb. Now, rhubarb appears in our boxes all the way through spring and summer after the hungry gap. It's there for the majority of the summertime, and we put it into our veg boxes. We consider it to be a veg, partly because you need to cook it, but also because it can be used in both a sweet and a savoury way. We don't grow our rhubarb in Devon. It gets grown for us by our grower Clive Martin, who's over in the Cambridgeshire Fens. But actually what I've done, I've grabbed some from the allotment and I've taken the whole piece with the leaf and all. You wouldn't get your leaf in the box. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the plant before we cook a couple of recipes. Rhubarb is a perennial plant, which means that instead of planting a seed and harvesting the plant and then having to plant another seed the following year, it stays in the ground and it comes back year after year. So during the winter it's dormant and usually it gets mulched to protect it from the frost, and then it will start to come up in spring. We're harvesting it from the fields, so we'll keep picking it all the way through the season. The leaves are actually poisonous. They can give you an upset stomach, so it's the stalks that you want. I've picked these with the leaves so you can see the whole plant, and they've got these crazy big, almost gonorrhea style leaves. And the plants look, when they get going, look kind of triffid-like and huge. Now those plants can get exhausted after a few years, and what you can do is split the crown, replant them and keep them going and perpetuate the plants that way, more so that than by seed. Now when you pick rhubarb, you want to pull the rhubarb out and bring out what we call the hoof on the rhubarb, so pull it off the plant rather than snapping it off the plant. If you snap it, it can be prone to disease and it can damage the plant. So you want to pull it out with this kind of hoof end on it. So you might get that attached to your rhubarb as well. The flavour of rhubarb is really quite bold and apparent. It is one of astringency and sharpness and sourness. Now if you do want to try it raw, a really good way to do that as a kind of curiosity, as a little sweet treat, is to cut yourself a baton of rhubarb and then just dip it into sugar and chew it. You get this amazing sharp, sweet, sour taste. It's almost like a precursor to a Haribo Fantastic Sweet. You can do it with salt as well, although that's much more niche. So we're going to do two simple recipes with this rhubarb. We're going to do one sweet and we're going to do one savoury. One of them is going to be a ketchup, sweet and sharp and salty and spicy, and you're going to use it just like tomato ketchup to really lift a dish and cut through anything that's kind of greasy or fatty. And the second recipe, I'm just going to show you how to lightly poach some rhubarb so it keeps its form and its shape, but it's just cooked through. I'm going to show you how to use the heat in a way that doesn't turn your rhubarb into mush every single time. We're going to start with the rhubarb ketchup. Now I'm going to trim the leaves off of this rhubarb, but if they come in your boxes, they won't have their leaves on. I'm going to take about 1 kilo or so of rhubarb, I think in total for this. Trim off those ends that we talked about on the kind of hoof end, if there's any discoloured bits there. And then the rest, I don't need to be formal about it, I'm just going to chop it and throw it straight into the pan. And to that, we're going to add some diced onions, ginger, garlic, chilli, cider vinegar, brown sugar, port or red wine. That's optional though, that just kind of gives it a bit more of a deeper colour and a bit more of a kind of grown-up flavour. And we're going to add some ground coriander seeds in there as well. We're going to cook it down gently for about 20 minutes to half an hour, keeping an eye on it, making sure it doesn't stick, giving it a turn every so often, until everything in that pan has cooked down and collapsed and gone really, really soft. We give it a stir every so often. Because we're looking at about 20 minutes, half an hour, I'm going to use that time to do a very simple recipe, and it is basically sweet poached or braised rhubarb. It has a tendency to break down and turn into mush as it cooks, and it goes from being a bit too tough to mush very, very quickly. If you want to keep those shapes, I'll show you a few tips to do that. Start by taking 2 oranges, and we're going to take the zest off with a peeler, just in big fat strips, nothing too formal, and straight into the pan. We'll juice the oranges and put that juice in there as well. And you really want a big wide flat bottom pan for this, because you want the rhubarb to sit in an even layer across the bottom of the pan. And we're going to add some sugar into there as well. That's going to temper the sharpness of the rhubarb. But I've seen some recipes where the amount of sugar is almost equivalent to the weight of the rhubarb, and it's just far too sweet. So we're going to add about 4 tablespoons, and then we're going to cut our rhubarb into about 3 to 4 centimetre batons. And we really want to make sure that they are the same length and width so they cook nice and evenly. Just before we put the pan onto the heat, I'm going to show you one more trick that's completely optional, and it's to put a couple of very thin slices of beetroot into the pan. That beetroot bleeds into the poaching liquid and it stains the rhubarb a really bright, vivid pink. It makes it look almost like the kind of early season expensive forced rhubarb. Pop it on a gentle heat and bring it up to just a simmer. Pop the lid on and cook it for about 4 to 5 minutes or so, just so it's started to soften, but so it's still got a little bit of bite to it. And then you turn the heat off, leave the lid on, and the declining, dropping heat in the pan will continue to cook the rhubarb and just take it over the finish line. Right, so this rhubarb now has been turned off, and that's just going to finish cooking as the heat drops out of that pan. Should be perfect once it's cool. The rhubarb ketchup has finished cooking. I took the lid off for the last half of the cooking just to drive some of that moisture away. Now everything in that pan is soft and mushy and ready to be blended. Add some pinches of salt to it and just check the seasoning. Tip it into a blender and we're going to blitz it until it's nice and smooth. And just to be sure to take out any of those little bits of spice or whatever that can get stuck in the teeth, we're going to pass it through a fine sieve as well, using the back of a ladle or a spatula to press it through. And then while it's still warm, transfer it to jars. You should get maybe 3 or 4 good sized jars out of this, and it will keep in the fridge for about 3 to 4 weeks as well. So our ketchup is jarred and cooling, and then the pan of poached that we put on earlier, that pan's cooled down completely now, but it's completely held its shape. So if I take a fork and I press down on a piece, it gives completely, it's nice and tender, but it's still holding its shape. Now it's taken up some of the orange and the sugar that's in there, so it's sweet, but it's still very, very tart. It's just how I like it. Now this will store in your fridge for 4 to 5 days. You can serve it with custard, you can put it on your breakfast granola, you do all kinds of stuff with it. Throw some cardamom in there, or a stick of cinnamon, or a bit of star anise. It will take some spices very well. You just got to be very careful and tweak it with not too much heat. All right? Thanks for watching. Please give these rhubarb recipes a go if you get your hands on some over the spring and summer. We've got one sweet and one savoury, and there's many more recipes on the website. If there's anything you would like to see us cook or talk about, please leave comments below. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification button to keep up to date with our weekly videos. Thanks.